Hey, pretty lady Siobhan. Hi, Josie.
What's up, people? Thanks for joining.
What's going on? What's going on? Hey. Hey.
What's up? What's up?
What's going on this good Sunday? Put a 1 in the comment section if you're having a good evening thus far. Come on, come on, come on. Thank you, Josie. Remember Josie from the show? She's on here. Josie from the show?
Oh, yeah. Right. What's up, Josie? How are you? Yeah, I still owe her husband a drink, right?
And
Yeah, I still.
That's what
Well,
he
I haven't seen him,
Yeah.
so I haven't seen
We
him.
missed her 40th.
In all
We weren't able
fairness,
to make
right?
it.
Yeah.
So we owe you. You owe him a drink, and I
Yeah.
owe you dinner. So we'll get together.
Right. Yeah.
All right, good, Garner. I'm glad you're enjoying your evening. All right, so
We can get started at 6
we can go
o'clock.
ahead. Good, Siobhan. You're enjoying your evening. Well, let's get started. Episode 17. Episode 17.
17.
All right, so
That's right.
we got an interesting
right.
topic today. So today's topic is modern marriages challenges, right? And I'm gonna repeat it one more time. Hi, mommy. Modern marriage challenges. All right. So I'm gonna break that down to some things that we go through in marriages that our parents or grandparents may have not went through. Right.
Right.
So the first thing that comes to mind for me is social media. So
Right.
our parents, when they first got married, our grandparents, they didn't have to worry about the distractions of people being on social media, right?
Right.
They didn't have to worry about emails, right, on the job, right? Because we do those emails, those chats, whatever we call them on the job, right?
Right.
Certain things they didn't have to worry about.
Yeah.
So I want to really talk about that because I think it's very important. I think it can cause a lot of stress on relationships, especially if
Okay.
that foundation is not strong and you have some insecurities within yourself or within your marriage, which is okay, right? I've had insecurities within myself in my marriage very early on, right? So there's nothing, I'm going to always be as transparent as I can be. I don't think there's nothing wrong with that. I think you grow as you move on and as the older you get, and also the closer that you get to God, right? Because you
And
feel
being honest about it too,
Yeah.
that you have some insecurities.
Right.
I think we're all insecure about something.
Right.
But when you're able to admit and keep it real with yourself, my big thing is, if you heard us speak before, you heard me say, if you can't keep it real with the person in the mirror, you can't keep it real with anybody.
Right.
So being real with yourself helps you solve your issue much faster. But yeah,
So you sure you don't want to go first today?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll go first.
You don't have to because you jumped in, so I thought you
No,
wanted to
go
first.
ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, take it away.
All right, because sometimes he jumps in. For those of you who are tuning in for your first time on our 17th episode,
I jumped
so I
in.
didn't know if he wanted the
jumped
floor
in.
because I believe in men leading, but I'll
Yeah.
take over if I have to.
Yeah, take
That
over.
being said, so let's talk about social media, right? We're talking about modern day marriages. We're talking about distractions and things that we have to deal with that our ancestors didn't have to deal with. So the first thing I want to discuss is
True.
boundaries, right? When you're on social media, I think one of my friends just said to me, she said a quote that was said by Tammy Roman on Basketball Wives about Evelyn claimed she didn't know that Kenny Anderson and her was married. And she said it's not a near person walking this earth or
Okay.
talking that don't know that he was married, which I agree. I don't think there's a near person walking this earth or talking that don't know that me and Tobias is married. You can't go to my page and don't know that I have a husband. You can't really go to my page and know that I have a husband that I'm into. So I'm not saying that you need to advertise it and broadcast it maybe the way I do, but I'm saying what works for me in my relationship. My husband, and I'll give him, of course, the opportunity and the floor to talk about it, but I don't think there's no issues regarding you ever worried about somebody on my social media or people not being clear as to who Mr. Reason or if there is a Mr. Reason, right? So I think you have to be very clear with boundaries and how you conduct yourself as a wife or as a husband, and I'll let you jump into the male point of view. But I think social media can have an effect on your relationship if you allow it to. I also think we have to be very careful with the tone when we're interacting with others, whether it be through an email, whether it be through a text message, whether it be through a DM, inbox, or whatever we may be on. Right now we got the Thread, so many different social media platforms.
Right.
But I think you need to be very clear because, and I don't want to, well, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to say I didn't want to step on nobody's toes, but we living in eras where now people are receiving a lot of attention that they may have never received before, right? And it's not down in anyone, but now we have so many different things that we can enhance our beauty, right? So, and I think when people are not used to attention, a lot of times we take tone or we take someone being friendly differently than someone that has used to attention their whole life, right? Yeah. So if someone says, hey, Tony, you look good, I'm not looking at it like that because I may be looking good to them and they're proud of me and my progress. But someone else may say, oh, you look good, or somebody's husband, you may look good, and they think that you want to lay down and screw them. So I think it's very important, your tone. I'm not going to get deep into this conversation because one of the wives follow me, but something just came up in the media where a husband sent a text message and it was blown all across the world, right? And I think you have to be very careful because you don't only represent yourself, but you represent your household and your spouse. So when you're interacting, whether it be through a job email, because sometimes you have those chats, whether it be whatever it is, Facebook, Instagram, X, Twitter, whatever it is.
Whatever the platform
just
is.
Be very careful because people receive things differently than, and my husband had to learn that because even though Tobias used to be the mean one, and I was always the social butterfly, and it kind of, I'm still a social butterfly, but it kind of turned away when Tobias is very friendly because I rubbed off on him. And I had to, early on our marriage, tell him how sometimes when women, they receive it, one, they may be jealous of your wife or they just want something to talk about, but then also they may take it as he wants me, right? And you got to be very careful with that. People are going to talk and people are going to assume and make up things, but you got to be very careful on how you just communicate with people. So I wanted to talk on that about social media. Also wanted to mention too, be very careful of not comparing yourselves to others. I think where you spend the most amount of time is really where your heart is at, right? So if you're on social media for hours and hours, and this is not a brand of yours, this is not anything dealing with your work, right, then it's going to be some type of attachment, right? We know those attachments when you're waking up to use the bathroom, whatever it is, and your phone is always there. So you have to be very careful. What you see, right, is what you attract. So you may see this beautiful couple, or you may see this individual, and you may think it's all good. Remember, to include myself and Tobias, nobody is going to tell you everything. And usually on social media platforms, people put now I'm a little bit more transparent because I don't care and I feel this is my testimony. But usually people are not going to share everything, and people are only going to share their good, right? So you never want to put yourself in a, where you're arguing with your spouse that, oh, well, Tony did that, or this one did that. And it's like, your relationship is your relationship. So don't let that social media, which our parents didn't have to go through, and grandparents and aunts and uncles, interfere with your relationship. Go ahead, I've been talking a lot.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't think you talked
Oh, okay.
a lot.
Well, I can keep going.
So we're speaking about modern communication and how that affects marriages today. And you said something that was key, which is attention. People get more attention these days than they've ever gotten before, or they've never had attention in the past, and for one reason or another, they get attention now. The attention comes from, we are now connected worldwide now. Mm-hmm. Back in the days when our parents, you mentioned our parents and stuff, grandparents or what have you, back in the days they just had their immediate community that they saw all the time. These days you have a plethora of cultures that you interact with and that people see that they've never seen before. So people may look exotic to them, and they may like that attention because they never had that attention from an exotic looking person. So the thing is that when you're using modern communication, you want to, as Tony said, draw that line. You want to be very careful about crossing the line. I think this is some of the best advice to give someone when it comes to communications in our day is handle everything as a business transaction. Be to the point, be succinct. What happens is when you start to get long-winded in your communications, you can be, your communication can be misconstrued as you're trying to do something else. So if someone sends you a message, say, hey, we are meeting for lunch at 12 p.m., are you joining? And then you say, well, you know what? I don't think I was going to join today, but I will. But will you be there at 12 p.m. today? See, now that can put the person in a different mindset that you didn't mean to put them in. So the communication factor is always about that line drawn in the sand. Another thing is that you have to understand the more fame that you have, the more popularity that you have, is the more cautious you have to be with sending out communications.
Good
okay,
point.
So as far as you sending the communication, what you should do is write your communication out, read the communication. I think the more famous you are, you probably need to go over it more than the average person.
I like that.
So one person, if you're just an average person, you're sending an email to someone of the opposite sex, read it once or twice before you press send, because guess what? You have to press send for that communication to go out. So read it. Now, if you have you're on more of a higher echelon or a higher celebrity status, go ahead and read it a few times, because this can be used against you. Remember, you're not only protecting yourself when you're married, you're protecting the marriage itself, right? So you have to be careful, because some people may not even call you out on the communication they thought was inappropriate at the point in time. They may wait and hold that communication until the future, and then just throw it on you out of nowhere and say, look at this person and how they really get down. You're not knowing that the person has these malicious intents in mind. You're just sending out a communication, but you have to be careful, okay? Your negligence doesn't excuse what you've done. You have to be very careful. Think about it. If I'm going to send out a communication on a social media platform, email, or anything like that, think to yourself, would my spouse appreciate me sending this? Is there something that they would find a problem with this communication? And it's not you trying to, it's not you being any sort of punk or sucker or anything like that. It's about common courtesy. Respect. Right? It's about empathizing on what the next person, your spouse, would think. What would you think if your spouse sent it out? Put the shoe on the other foot. If my spouse sent this out, how would I think about this? What would I really think, right? Is there anything that can be considered an ulterior motive on this particular communication? And then send your communication. Because again, we're not dealing with our parents' way of communicating and their parents' way of communicating. We're on different times. It opens us up to the world itself.
So you brought up so many good points, and it made me just think of things with me being in leadership for so many years, right? Over 20 years, right? And I supervise so many men in my field, right? Hundreds of, maybe thousands of men, right?
Right.
And I think that's something to look at too. Let's talk about just how we interact also. Like when we're at work, or because now most people, if they work virtual, whatever, but some people don't, right? It's important too, even how you communicate in person, because you're still representing, like you said, and I like that, your marriage, right? You're representing your spouse, your family, but you got to be very careful. And some of the things that I used to do is, one, especially when I got to that level when I had my assistants and people in there with me, I never would meet with a male by myself. Never. Because I'm never going to give anybody that opportunity to ever make up something. Another thing too is you got to be very, very cautious of how comfortable you get with individuals that you interact with on a daily basis. So you just brought up something and it made me just come to mind, because a lot of times we call it, that's not cute when we say work wife, work husband, because you wouldn't say that. Hopefully you wouldn't say that in front of your significant other. But I know people play like that. But you got to be very careful, because people, especially when you appear to be happy, they're going to try to test you, right? They're going to do things, and sometimes it's not them. Sometimes the enemy uses them to test people, to see how you respond, to see, and I know my mother and sisters on here, one of my sisters, and we've heard so many stories of some people that I used to be friends with, right? And they do things. We used to hear stories about how people would do things and say, well, I just want to see how in love they really are. Or I just want to see, you know, and it's unfortunate that people act like that. But it's these are the games that people play. We're dealing with people. My sister said something. I'm not going to go too far into it because I have to watch what I say. I don't want to offend anyone. But we're dealing with people where mentally they're not where they need to be, right? So a lot of times people are interacting with us and we think that they're normal and really they're not. So they get things in their head and may say, oh, this is a beautiful couple, and I'm going to destroy them, right? And it just takes one thing to occur to destroy your good relationship. So just be very careful. And since I see so many comments in the comment section, I just want some feedback from our beautiful, beautiful audience on some ways that you deal with social media with your spouse. So you can say you limit your time on social media. You can give us an example, whereas you let your mate know about certain friends that you have of the opposite sex on social media. But just share with us some of the things that you may have been through, just a couple of comments or things that you may have struggled with due to social media.
Yeah, a good one you brought up is the work husband wife situation. You have to be careful with those because you're already crossing a line.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Sexual harassment. People can switch on you.
Yeah. So you're already crossing the line. You're letting someone knock down a barrier that shouldn't be knocked down by giving them the title of wife or husband. You shouldn't be doing that. Everyone should know their place and their position. Okay, this is what destroys everything, when people don't know their position, what they're supposed to play. Now, the question is, are you giving off the wrong? Are you giving off the wrong signals? Okay. Are you messing everything up by calling this person your work wife or husband? Right. So you have to think of it. You have to keep those boundaries and you have to keep those lines up. You know, we're cool and all that, but that's as far as it goes.
We're not gonna play.
You understand? I'm not saying don't have female friends or co-workers. That, you know, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is there should be a boundary up with that co-worker that you have.
I'm just looking in the comment section. I see, of course, Mommy put, we're dealing with some jealous people. TT put, there's a lot of people that are not normal and didn't take their special vitamin. We put, people are jealous of anyone that's happy and they have no God in them, and that's deep. That is deep. Mommy spoke about boundaries. Yes, boundaries. And I know, being the oldest in the household, what I loved about Daddy T so much, and I looked for that in my husband. So you find a kind of, you know, they say when you married, you know, the same traits usually of your father and vice versa with your mom. But Daddy T didn't play the nonsense. When my mother would have a friend or somebody over, Daddy T would be straightforward and be like, she too friendly. She too much smiling in my face. And see, I love that because, and it wasn't to start trouble with my mother and the individual, was to let her know she doing too much, right? Because I'm not going to have her coming in here messing up my household. And sometimes we need to be very straight up, okay?
Yeah.
All right. So anything else you would like to add?
No, I added everything that I think needed to be added. So I'm good.
I think this was a very, very good topic. I hope you all received something from this topic. So we're going to get into our marriage mailbox. Very good questions once again. All right. So what particular order do I want to go in? I'll start with this one.
Okay.
And I'll let you start if you don't mind, young man.
No, I don't.
All right.
Go ahead, let's do it.
How do we keep our connection strong when one partner travels a lot for work?
So communication is the key with this one. When you're traveling a lot, you guys are not around each other a lot. But I think that you can remedy that if you're married by communicating. When you communicate, when I say that, I mean let your spouse know when and you will be around or will you be at, right? Just by courtesy. Also, I would say when you get to where you're at, when you land, what have you, give your spouse a call or a text. Let them know, okay, I landed, I'm okay. I'm going to the hotel. I'll be there in roughly 45 minutes or so. Then give them a call when you're in the hotel. Hey, I'm good. I'm here. How's it going? What's going on? Try to have a nice short conversation. You know, you don't have to be on the phone for hours because you're traveling.
Right.
That's your job. So just, check in. Hey, what's up? How are you? What's going on? The conversation could be about 5 minutes. Believe it or not, this works. I think the biggest thing, though, about traveling for work and being separate a long period of time from your spouse is when you guys do get together, when you're not traveling, is to spend as much time together as possible. Whatever works for you. So if the person comes back and they're in town or they're home for 2 weeks, spend at least several days being together for those 2 weeks, right? Now, your spouse, you have different friends. So you guys may want to hang out with your friends, right? That's understandable. But you got to take that time out and spend it with your spouse when you guys are together.
Right.
I think that's very important. And just keep that communication going. Because obviously, if you're traveling for work, you have a spouse that supports your traveling, right? They support you. How you're being supported? By everything being taken care of while you're gone. Everything in the household, right? Just as simple as the house being clean or dishes being clean. You don't want to be gone for 3-4 days and you come home, it's 3-4 days worth of dishes in the sink. That doesn't make a lot of sense. So that you're being helped even when you're not there. So keep the communication tight, keep it strong, be considerate at the same time when traveling for work. I'll let you.
So I like the considerate part because sometimes you can be in different time zones.
Right.
So you want to, and sometimes that had happened to us in the past.
Yeah,
so I'll make sure I
times,
call before I know that you were going to bed or Majesty was going to bed.
Right.
Also, too, depending on your finances and depending on your situation, I would say if they travel a lot for work, join them when possible. I'm not saying that you need to be on every trip, but if you can afford it and you have the time, let's say from your job or you're not working, whatever it may be, there's nothing wrong with saying, well, you know what? I know you're going to be gone. I'm sure that the hotel is paid for by the company or whatever it may be. You get there, you catch your flight and y'all have a nice time. You can make that into a mini vacation, right? So that's something to look at. Also, too, I like what you said about be courteous, check in, right? Because what's the difference of the person being home? What happens is, of course, you have that physical contact. But what I'm saying is, usually when your spouse comes home, you're talking about your day, you're talking about what happened, or let me tell you what happened, vice versa. So you want to do the same thing. Let me tell you what happened today, if you can. Because sometimes you may be tired, different time zones, but you say, let me tell you what happened with this deal. Let me tell you what happened, whatever it may be. So I think sharing is always good. Unique, agree with you. Communication is key. Communication is going to be key with most things dealing with marriage. I'm just being honest. I think where we fail at with so many things because we don't open our mouth or we're scared to say things. I think that is a lot. Also, too, like, I have friends that are married to or ex-athletes, retired athletes. And I know they would say they're going 3 months, but then for a month, and they would make sure during that month that they plan it out and they'll schedule activities and things like that. So, and you make mention of if that individual is home, you want to make sure that you're spending time. It's nice to have friends, but at the end of the day, your most important relationship should be with your significant other. So you should make sure when that individual gets home, you want to give them some downtime to get themselves together, get back acclimated into the routine. But at the end of the day, it's time for us to have our time. Okay. So I think you answered that really well.
Thank
and
you.
I agree with the
I
check-in.
live for your approval.
I know.
Thank you.
I know, all these years. And I would also say, too, not only video check-ins. Like, some people don't have iPhones, but there's different things that, ways that we can check in on different apps. So there's nothing wrong with the ones that do have iPhones, FaceTime, and different things like that. But we living in times where, again, our ancestors didn't have, the things that we have, but we need to go ahead and utilize those tools and resources, okay? Let's get into the second question. All right, how do we deal with friends of the opposite sex and make sure that we honor our marriage? Okay. Would you like me to go first?
Yeah.
Let me read it again for myself.
Okay.
All right. How do we deal with friends of the opposite sex and still ensure that we honor our marriage? And we touched a little bit on this before, but let me be very clear. So, because I have male friends that I've had for a long period of time. First of all, clear boundaries once again, right? Your spouse, what usually happens is your spouse, most likely, because you're together as one, right, will become friends with your friends of the opposite sex, right? My good girlfriends call Tobias their brother. They're very close to Tobias, and vice versa. So my good guy friends are very close to my husband. Really, they call him now more than they call me. They remember his birthday sometimes and be like, oh, when's Tony's birthday? But whatever, I ain't gonna get into all that. But they're close. So I think there should never be an issue with disrespect, as far as, because, some people, it may be a new relationship that you're entering, right? Or a new marriage. And maybe, your friends have seen you with several different people and they may not like the individual. But I think it needs to be very clear on, this is my spouse, we're going to maintain. And I think also the spouse needs to know, this was my friend for a long period of time, right? Like with Jamie. Jamie's been like a brother to me since I've been a child, right? It was very clear, Jamie is my brother. But Jamie understood, it was very clear, Tobias is now my husband. So I think that has to be communicated. And then you have to be very clear. I think you said that a couple of months ago when we were doing this. Wow, we're going on months. As far as, what are your intentions in this friendship? Right? You got to be careful on when we use the word friend. I know lots of people. I lived in several states. I've worked with different companies, big companies. So I know a lot of people. So you got to be very careful on who do you call your friend. So you can't have these relationships and that there's either some past history there, or this individual has some feelings or may have some liking to you. So I think I just want to touch on that. What else? You go.
I don't know. You done on that?
I may jump back in.
Okay. Well, feel free to jump back in.
Thank you.
So the most important thing, Tony mentioned it, is when you have a spouse and you have friends of the opposite sex, you need to make sure that line in the sand is always drawn. You need to make sure things are black and white and that there's no gray area. What that means is that there is no way for you to infiltrate in this marriage, okay? No, regardless of what you think, regardless of what is going on. There are times that we share information about our marriage. We need to be very careful on who we share this information with, because information is power. The adage is knowledge is power. Information is knowledge. When someone feels they know or they think they know all about you and your marriage, when they want to infiltrate, they're going to try. And guess what they're going to do when they infiltrate or when they attempt to infiltrate? They're going to throw up the information you gave them about the marriage.
That's so true.
Everything you complained about, the person's going to go throw right back in your face. Well, I thought you didn't like this. I thought you didn't like that. I could do this. I could do that on what you do like. You have to be careful with that. You left the gray area one way or another. And you have to take responsibility for what you have done by leaving that gray area. So if you do something like that and make a mistake like that, you have to learn from that mistake. Unfortunately, we make mistakes. You learn from that mistake and you move on accordingly. Which you got? Yeah, because
you bring that up. I got to get it out, right? So I'm thinking too. So avoid certain conversations, and I always speak on that. remember, this individual should be the closest person to you. So some conversations, whether it be friends or not from the opposite sex, you shouldn't have those conversations. And what my grandmother, God bless her soul, Miss Wise, used to say, if you're going to talk about your husband, make sure you leave in your husband, and vice versa. Like, don't talk about somebody that you know that you're going to be with. Of course, you may get attitudes, things are not going right, but be very careful, like Tobias says, because sometimes we overshare, and this individual has been your friend probably longer than the years that you've been married. So they're going to be upset at the individual, like you said, and use it against them, and then you're back in love next week. Right. So one thing, and everybody knows, I don't play that. I'm not going to sit there and have a conversation about my husband, because that's my husband at the end of the day, and we're going to deal with it. But once you give people just a little ammo, they do run with it. So be careful with the oversharing, and certain things should not go out your household unless you're going professional help, who my cousin is a licensed therapist. If you're going to a therapist or you're going to your pastor, someone that can pour into your relationship and give you tools that you can use. Other than that, watch what you share and watch what comes out your mouth, even with friends. Because sometimes friends, a year or two, they're not your friend anymore.
A lot of times, yeah. So it's very important that you draw that line in the sand. That's what we mean by drawing the line.
One more thing.
Yeah.
Don't say it like that.
What?
Physical touch. I'm going to tell you right now, because that's a boundary for me. So be careful, and you check with your spouse on what you like and what you don't like regarding the opposite sex. So some people, if you've been my friend for a long period of time, then I don't have an issue with you giving my husband a hug. But if I don't know you like that, you're not going to be all over my husband's body. We're not doing that. And vice versa. Like, I give people the church hug, or I extend my hand and say, hey, how you doing? But just I think that's something that we need to talk about, because even with the touching, people take it, oh, he touched on me. Oh, she squeezed me. I hear so many different conversations for people. Yes, the church hug. You extend yourself as a lady and vice versa. But don't hug on my husband. Please don't grab on him, because I've been known, and that was the past. I'm not going to say what I used to do, but we're not doing that, right? I don't want to body slam nobody in the church like I did before. We're not doing that, okay? But just be very careful. Make sure you're comfortable how people physically interact with your spouse, because that's important, because that can be a boundary,
That is a boundary.
Yeah, it is.
It definitely is a boundary. Again, we're talking about gray areas. There should never be a gray area with your relationship with people. Okay, the gray area is them thinking that maybe they could get one over on you.
Right.
Okay. So it's your job to make sure your friend of the opposite sex, or whoever, because we got people that like the same sex these days, which has always been around, just more prominent now. You have to draw that line in the sand and have them understand it ain't going to happen. One way or another, by your attitude, it ain't going to happen. You understand? So don't even play yourself. So, but, we're over time.
We're over time, but I thought this was a very interesting topic. Again, I hope you received something for the information that we shared today. Yeah. We're closing out episode 17. As you know, I have announced that our book, A Reason for Marriage, will be coming out very soon. I hope everyone signed up either for our website and our YouTube page, because we're moving in a new direction. So you won't see us on Instagram. Of course, I'll give you enough notification to know, but we're moving solely to YouTube, right? So we have a lot of interesting things going on. I am very excited. We are greatly appreciative of all your support, text messages, phone calls, all the kudos, accolades. We're just very, very grateful. Again, this vision came about when we was in year 15. And I was very apprehensive about doing it, because I felt we weren't married long enough. And I'm so thankful that my husband, my sister TT, one of my friends Gary was like, you better do it. It's in you. You better do it, Yeah. And I said, I kept seeing negative feedback. People kept saying, oh, all married people cheat. Oh, people not happy. Stop trying to read people relationships. Everybody ain't miserable and everybody ain't cheating. And I think that's what the enemy want to do. They want to keep us divided. We need our black and brown families to be united. Okay. So we're going to keep pushing it.